Time to pull up a chair. We've got another great story for you today in the rLounge. Not everyone is cut out to be a parent, and some people go out of their way to prove it. Today in the rLounge, a tale of one parent staying focused, doing the hard work, and showing that being a parent isn't about excuses or drama. It's about actually showing up. Crazy ex sued me for full custody and more money, but she lost everything and I ended up getting it all. I met my ex at a friend's housewarming party 6 years ago. She was stunning, the type of woman who knows exactly how attractive she is and uses it to her advantage. Long dark hair, perfect makeup, and this confidence that made everyone in the room notice her. We hit it off right away, exchanged numbers, and started dating about 2 weeks later. Things moved fast between us. After only 2 months of dating, she called me crying about how her roommate situation was toxic and she needed to get out ASAP. I had a 2-bedroom apartment and was doing okay financially, so I offered to let her move in. Looking back, that was the first major red flag I ignored. Who moves in with someone after only 2 months? But I was completely infatuated with her at that point. Living together was good at first. The honeymoon phase was intense. We couldn't keep our hands off each other. Then one day, she told me she was pregnant. I was shocked but excited. I'd always wanted to be a father, and even though this wasn't planned, it felt like the universe was pushing us in the right direction. I proposed a month after finding out about the pregnancy, bought a nice ring, did the whole one-knee thing at a fancy restaurant. She said yes, but insisted on a long engagement to plan the perfect wedding. I was fine with that. We had a baby on the way, so getting the wedding perfect wasn't my top priority. When our son was born, it was the best day of my life. I took 3 weeks off to help with the baby and let her recover. During this time, I started noticing how attached she was to her phone. She was constantly smiling at texts, and if I came anywhere near her while she was on it, she'd quickly lock the screen or switch apps. When I asked who she was talking to so much, she'd get defensive. Things came to a head on Christmas Eve. I walked into our bathroom and caught her sending revealing photos to someone saved in her phone as work contact. When I confronted her, she claimed it was a work thing and accused me of being paranoid because of sleep deprivation from taking care of the baby. I didn't buy it. I also didn't want to ruin Christmas, so I let it go temporarily. A few days after New Year's, my suspicion got the better of me. She was in the shower, and her phone was just sitting there on the bed. I knew her passcode. She'd never bothered to change it after telling me once, so I decided to check. What I found was worse than I imagined. Hundreds of messages between her and someone she's labeled as her ex, dating back to before our son was born. They were planning meetups during times she claimed to be with friends or running errands. There were explicit photos, videos, and messages about how much better he was than me. I took screenshots of everything and sent them to my own phone as evidence. When she got out of the shower, I confronted her with what I'd found. Instead of apologizing and showing any remorse, she went completely ballistic. She screamed that I was controlling and insecure for going through her phone. She called me every name in the book and said I'd never satisfy her the way her ex did. Then she did something I never expected. She packed some clothes, grabbed our son, and stormed out, saying she was going to stay with a friend. I later found out that this friend was actually her ex. She took our 3-month-old baby to stay with a guy she'd been cheating on me with. I texted her repeatedly asking when she was bringing our son back, but she either ignored me or sent vague responses like, "When you calm down," or "When you stop being so controlling." After a few days, she finally came back to get more of her things. She demanded I give her $3,000 for baby expenses, even though I'd been covering all household costs, including baby items, since day one. When I refused to hand over cash, she threatened to make my life hell and ensured I never see my son again. I recorded this conversation on my phone without her knowing, perfectly legal in my state. Little did I know how valuable that recording would become. A week later, I was served with court papers. She was filing for emergency custody, claiming I was unstable, verbally abusive, and unable to care for an infant. All complete BS. She also requested $4,500 monthly in child support, nearly double what the state calculator suggested based on my income. I immediately started looking for a lawyer, found one who specialized in father's rights, and paid the retainer with most of my savings. The lawyer reviewed her petition and told me her claims were flimsy, but courts sometimes favor mothers in emergency hearings, so we needed to be prepared. On my lawyer's advice, I hired a private investigator to document her activities. The emergency hearing came quickly. The judge seemed skeptical of her claims from the start, especially since she couldn't provide any evidence of the alleged abuse or instability. I had text messages showing I'd been asking to see my son, while she was the one keeping him from me. The judge denied her request for emergency custody due to insufficient evidence of immediate danger, and established a temporary 50-50 custody arrangement until a final determination could be made. She was visibly furious, especially when her request for temporary support above guidelines was denied. The first week I had my son under the temporary arrangement, I noticed unusual bruising on his arm. It looked like finger marks, like someone had grabbed him too hard. I took photos and immediately brought him to his pediatrician, who documented the marks as concerning and inconsistent with typical baby accidents. The doctor was required to report this to Child Protective Services, but also advised me to include this information in my custody case. Around this time, I received the first report from the PI. What they found was shocking. She was going out to clubs until 3 a.m. while supposedly caring for our son, leaving him with various people I'd never met or heard of. The PI also discovered her boyfriend, the ex she'd been cheating with, had a criminal history, including a domestic violence charge from a previous relationship. This information sent chills down my spine, especially after seeing the bruises on my son. She began sending me barrages of texts at all hours, alternating between threats and fake sweetness. One minute it was, "If you drop the custody fight, I might let you see him on holidays." And the next it was, "I miss you, we should try again for our son's sake." I didn't respond to any of it, just forwarded everything to my lawyer. The court ordered us to attend mediation before proceeding to a full custody hearing. She showed up an hour late, reeking of alcohol at 10 a.m. The mediator noticed and documented it in her report. During the session, she refused all reasonable proposals and demanded full custody, with me getting supervised visits twice a month. When asked why I should have supervised visits, she couldn't provide any legitimate reason. Mediation failed, as expected. The PI continued monitoring her activities and sent more evidence. She was subletting our son's bedroom in her apartment to a stranger to make extra cash while making our son sleep in her room. They also documented her leaving him alone in the apartment while she stepped out for over an hour. I immediately forwarded this to my lawyer and filed another report with CPS. CPS visited her place after I filed the report based on the bruising and neglect evidence. Somehow she convinced them everything was fine. They closed the case with an unfounded status. I was furious, but my lawyer assured me that the documentation would still be useful for our custody case. She then filed an amended petition demanding full legal and physical custody, $5,000 monthly support, and that I pay all her legal fees. Her filing included fabricated evidence of text messages that were clearly edited. My lawyer immediately filed a motion to have the evidence authenticated, which her side opposed. During one custody exchange, she screamed at me in front of our son, calling me a worthless sperm donor, and threatening to find someone better to be his real dad. I recorded the entire incident on my phone without her knowledge. When I showed this to my lawyer, he said this kind of behavior would not look good for her in court. The court appointed a guardian ad litem, GAL, to investigate both homes and make custody recommendations. This is a person whose job it is to represent the best interests of the child in court proceedings. My ex immediately tried to befriend her on social media and sent her gifts, which the GAL reported to the court as concerning behavior. When the GAL visited my home, I provided copies of all evidence, including PI reports, medical records, and recordings. I showed her my son's fully equipped nursery, child-proofed home, and detailed parenting journal I'd been keeping. I answered all her questions honestly and made it clear that despite everything, I just wanted what was best for our son. The GAL then visited my ex's home. According to her report filed later, she found concerning living conditions, including empty alcohol bottles, evidence of smoking indoors, and minimal child-appropriate accommodations. The report also mentioned that my ex spent most of the visit complaining about me rather than focusing on her son's needs. Finally, the day of the custody hearing arrived. My ex showed up 20 minutes late, dressed inappropriately for court in a revealing outfit that made the judge visibly uncomfortable. Her testimony was full of contradictions, and she became hostile during cross-examination when my lawyer presented evidence contradicting her claims. I testified calmly, focusing on our son's needs and my commitment to co-parenting despite the challenges. I presented my evidence of my parenting abilities and the stable home environment I provided. The GAL testified that based on her investigation, she recommended I receive primary physical custody with the ex having limited supervised visitation until she could demonstrate more responsible parenting. The next day, the court rendered its decision. I was awarded primary physical custody, 85-15 split, sole legal custody, and she was ordered to pay child support based on her income. The judge also mentioned that the evidence suggested my ex had been using the custody battle as a means to extract money rather than out of genuine concern for our son's well-being. The system had worked the way it was supposed to. The judge saw through her lies and manipulations and made a decision based on what was truly best for our son. She filed for emergency custody claiming I was unfit, demanded excessive child support, and tried to limit my role in our son's life to that of a distant provider. Instead, she's now the one with limited visitation and a support obligation. She cheated on you while pregnant, used your child as a bargaining chip, and then had the nerve to demand money for expenses that you were already covering. Yuck. She tried to gaslight you, manipulate the court, and present herself as a victim, all while leaving your son with strangers, subletting his bedroom, and going out late at night like none of this mattered. Her priorities were completely upside down. Her social life over her baby, her ex over her own child, and lies over responsibility. The scary part is how audacious and systematic she was, but the silver lining is that the court saw through the act. Update 1. Crazy ex sued me for full custody and more money, but she lost everything and I ended up getting it all. It's been about a month and a half since my last post and a lot has happened, thanks to everyone who offered support and advice. To quickly recap, my ex cheated, took our son when I confronted her, filed for emergency custody, claiming I was unfit, demanded excessive child support, but the court saw through her lies and awarded me primary physical custody, 85/15, and sole legal custody. She was ordered to pay child support based on her income. My ex has been doing everything possible to make this transition difficult and continues to show she cares more about hurting me than being there for her son. The drama started immediately after the court decision. She didn't show up for her very first scheduled visitation. No call, no text, nothing. Our son was dressed and ready to go, and I sat around waiting for an hour before finally messaging her asking where she was. Her response? Something came up, not like he'll remember anyway. Our son might not consciously remember individual visits at this age, but he deserves consistency and care from both parents. I documented the no-show and informed my lawyer, who advised me to keep detailed records of all missed visitations. Almost a week later, she finally showed for her scheduled time, but was an hour late and brought her boyfriend, the guy she cheated with, along. I refused to let him take my son since he wasn't on the court-approved pickup list, especially given what I know about his criminal history. She completely lost it in my driveway, screaming obscenities and threatening to call the police on me for withholding her son. The irony was that my neighbors actually called the police because of her behavior. When officers arrived, they reviewed the custody order I showed them and advised her that I was within my rights to refuse handover to an unauthorized person. They suggested she leave before the situation escalated further. 3 days after that incident, I received notification that she had appealed the custody decision. Her appeal claimed the judge was biased against mothers and that the GAL had a personal vendetta against her. My lawyer assured me the appeal had virtually no chance of success since she wasn't presenting any new evidence or valid legal arguments, just rehashing her displeasure with the outcome. While dealing with the appeal, I noticed her first child support payment was due but nothing came through. When I messaged to inquire about it, she replied, "Good luck collecting. I quit my job, so have fun getting blood from a stone." Since the BI had been so helpful during the custody case, I decided to keep them on retainer for a bit longer. That turned out to be another smart decision. Within days, they sent me evidence showing she hadn't quit her job at all, but was now working under the table to avoid wage garnishment. They also documented her posting on social media about her expensive shopping spree and weekend getaway while claiming poverty to avoid child support. The appellate court denied her appeal for lack of substantive legal grounds and, adding insult to injury for her, ordered her to pay my legal fees for the appeal process. I filed for wage garnishment and enforcement with family court. The hearing was scheduled for early August, giving us time to gather more evidence of her employment and spending habits. Thanks again for all the support from this community. Update 2. The child support enforcement hearing finally happened in early August. She showed up looking like she'd just stepped out of a salon wearing designer clothes and a new watch, yet claimed hardship and inability to pay. The judge wasn't buying it, especially after I presented the PI's evidence of her continued employment and lavish spending. Her social media posts bragging about shopping sprees and weekend getaways came back to haunt her when my lawyer presented them alongside her claims of financial hardship. The judge was visibly annoyed by the obvious contradiction and ordered immediate wage garnishment. The judge also made it clear that continued evasion would result in contempt charges, which could mean fines or even jail time. After that hearing, she missed her next supervised visit, and the one after that, and the one after that. This was now the third consecutive no-show. Each time the visitation center documented it, and each time I added it to my growing file. Based on this pattern of no-shows, my lawyer advised me to file a motion to modify visitation. The court granted my motion, reducing her visitation to once monthly supervised visits with mandatory drug and alcohol screening before each visit. The judge cited her demonstrated lack of commitment to the existing visitation schedule and concerns about substance use, based on the midnight incident at my home. She failed to appear for her first monthly visit under the new schedule. She also didn't show up for the required screening. At this point, she hadn't seen our son in over 2 months despite having opportunities to do so. The most surprising development came at the end of September when I received notification that she was moving to another state with her boyfriend. She didn't bother to inform the court as requested by her custody order, which explicitly stated that Neither parent could move more than 100 miles away without court approval and modification of the custody agreement. My lawyer explained that her move without court approval or any attempt to modify the custody order to accommodate the distance could be considered abandonment under the state's laws. Given that she had already failed to exercise her visitation rights for months, this was the final piece needed to pursue termination of her parental rights. I struggle with this decision. Terminating someone's parental rights is a serious step, and despite everything she's done, I wasn't sure if I should take it that far. But my lawyer pointed out that she had effectively removed herself from her son's life already. She wasn't paying support, wasn't showing up for visits, and now she had moved hundreds of miles away without any plan to maintain a relationship with him. I filed a motion for termination of her parental rights based on abandonment, defined in our state as no meaningful contact for 90-plus days despite opportunity, and failure to support. The hearing was scheduled for late October. When she was served with papers for the termination hearing, she immediately blew up my phone with messages. The initial hearing for the termination petition was eye-opening. She appeared via video, claiming she couldn't afford to return to the state for the hearing. The judge was clearly unimpressed, noting that she'd made no effort to maintain any relationship with our son despite having court-ordered opportunities to do so. Had paid $0 in support despite court orders, and had moved out of state without following proper legal procedures. Her testimony was full of excuses. She missed visits because she was sick, though she never called to reschedule. She couldn't pay support because she was between jobs, despite evidence of her working and spending freely. She moved without notice because it was a sudden opportunity she couldn't pass up. The judge seemed skeptical of all these claims, especially in light of the documented pattern of behavior over the past months. The final termination hearing was scheduled for a week later. She didn't appear, not in person, not by video. Her absence spoke volumes. The court granted termination of her parental rights based on abandonment, failure to support, and demonstrated disinterest in parenting. The judge noted this was not a decision made lightly, but was clearly in my son's best interest given the overwhelming evidence that she had voluntarily removed herself from his life. A week later, I received the final court documents confirming termination of her parental rights. My son is officially just mine now. All of her demands for money, her attempts to take him away, her games and manipulation, all of it backfired spectacularly. The irony of this situation isn't lost on me. She initiated this legal battle trying to take my son away from me and extract as much money as possible. Instead, she ended up losing all legal ties to him and owing money she'll likely never pay. When this all started, I would have been happy with 50-50 custody and a cooperative co-parenting relationship. But at every turn, she chose the conflict over cooperation, personal vendettas over our son's well-being, and in the end, she chose her new relationship and lifestyle over being a mother. Our son is now 14 months old and thriving. He's walking, starting to talk, and is the happiest little guy you could imagine. He hasn't seen his mother in nearly 4 months, and at his age, he likely won't remember her at all as he grows up. I've started putting together a memory box with photos and memories from the early days when she was still in his life. Someday, when he's old enough to understand, I'll have to explain why his mother isn't in his life. I won't lie to him, but I'll try to present the facts in an age-appropriate way without demonizing her. That's going to be one of the hardest conversations of my life, but it's years away. Unbelievable. She went from cheating and filing false claims to skipping visits, flaunting money she claimed she didn't have, and then moving out of state without telling anyone, basically abandoning her own child. It's staggering how much effort she put into proving she didn't care about being a parent. At this point, it's not just bad parenting, it's intentional, calculated negligence. Your son is thriving, walking, talking, and happy, and that's because you prioritized stability and care every step of the way. She walked out, and in doing so, left you with the gift of knowledge your child is safe and loved. Sometimes actions speak louder than words, and her scream of neglect louder than any claim she could make. Do you have a similar story? Share it with us in the comments. And thank you for joining us today in the rLounge. Be sure to like and subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on our next video. Until next time. And please, put your chair back where you found it.